He was born in a city still haunted by war, a child of rubble and ration lines, of silence and survival. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin entered the world on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, a city that had just survived one of the deadliest sieges in human history. The trauma of that siege would not only define the city, but shape the man who would one day rule over a vast and fractured Russia. His father was a factory worker who had fought against the Nazis. His mother had nearly died during the war. Their survival was a miracle. Their poverty was a fact. As a boy, Putin grew up in a communal apartment, sharing a bathroom with several families. He later described himself as a street hooligan, always willing to punch first and ask questions later. Putin, like many former agents, found himself in a new world that rewarded boldness and connections more than ideology. Putin handled international relations and business deals. He was quiet but ruthless, discreet but effective. Those who worked with him noticed his remarkable memory and his total control over emotion. Then, in a stunning twist, Yeltsin named him prime minister in 1999. Putin was unknown to most Russians, but he was trusted by the people who mattered. But inside, he was quiet, watchful, absorbing everything around him. Like many Soviet boys, he dreamed of power, but not through politics, not through money. He wanted to be a spy. There were rats, hunger, and ice-covered windows in the winter. But there was also discipline, control, the beginnings of a powerful desire for order. Hundreds were killed. The government blamed Chechen terrorists. Putin appeared on TV and vowed revenge. In a trembling voice, he told the nation, "I have made a decision. I'm leaving." U.S. President George W. Bush famously said he had looked into Putin's eyes and got a sense of his soul. That optimism would not last. He stepped aside, becoming prime minister, and installed Dmitry Medvedev as president. But everyone knew who still held the real power. And just like that, Vladimir Putin became the acting president of Russia. Thousands marched in the streets of Moscow, accusing the government of rigging the election. Putin blamed foreign interference. Russian troops seized Crimea, a peninsula that belonged to Ukraine. Days later, a referendum was held under military occupation. Crimea was annexed into Russia. The West cried foul. Sanctions were imposed. NATO was put on alert. But inside Russia, Putin's approval ratings soared. He tightened control over civil society, labeling NGOs as foreign agents. Critics were silenced, jailed, or worse. He claimed it was to protect Russian speakers and denazify the government, that only strength would save them. But the world saw it as naked aggression. Cities were bombed, civilians killed, millions fled. Critics said he had built a system where only he mattered. Allies feared him, opponents vanished. He transformed a broken state into a centralized power. He restored national pride for many, even as he sparked fear abroad. The world watched, unsure of what would come next. Russia's invasion of Georgia in 2008, its crackdown on dissent, and its control over energy pipelines raised alarms. He is not just a man, he is a force of shadow that stretches across decades, borders, and destinies. He launched a second war in Chechnya with overwhelming force. His approval ratings soared. The public saw him as strong, decisive, and ruthless. Exactly what they wanted. Putin was small and often picked on. But he was quick to fight back, sometimes recklessly. He said it was necessary to stop the chaos of the 1990s, as payback for Western arrogance, as a symbol of Russian resurgence. Many Russians agreed. After years of economic collapse and national humiliation, they were ready for strength. Opposition leader Alexei Navalny was poisoned in 2020. He survived, only to be jailed upon return. Independent media outlets were shut down. Protests were crushed. The West united in support, sending weapons and imposing sanctions. Russia was cut off from global finance. Its economy suffered, but Putin didn't back down. In 1985, he was stationed in East Germany. There, in the divided city of Dresden, he lived a quiet life under deep cover. He gathered intelligence, recruited informants, and monitored political dissent. He was loyal, efficient, and above all anonymous. At just 16 years old, Putin walked into a KGB office and asked how to join. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, East Germany collapsed. He rebuilt the economy thanks in part to rising oil prices. Middle-class life returned to Russian cities. But behind the scenes, democratic institutions were eroding. Protesters surrounded the KGB office. Putin called Moscow for instructions. No one answered. He would later say, "The country I served no longer existed." He burned sensitive documents and prepared for the worst. But the mob never broke through. He returned to Leningrad, disillusioned but not defeated. He was told to get a law degree first, so he did. He studied at Leningrad State University, where he also joined the Communist Party. After graduating in 1975, the KGB called him in. His dream had come true. Putin was trained in counterintelligence, surveillance, and manipulation. But history didn't stay still. The Soviet Union collapsed just 2 years later. Russia descended into chaos. Inflation soared. Crime exploded. The KGB was dismantled. The old order was gone. In this new world, Putin joined the team of Anatoly Sobchak, the liberal mayor of Leningrad. In 1996, Sobchak lost re-election. Putin moved to Moscow, and that's when his real rise began. He joined the presidential administration under Boris Yeltsin. Within 3 years, he became the head of the FSB, the modern version of the KGB. Later that year, a series of apartment bombings rocked Russia. On New Year's Eve, 1999, Boris Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned. He promised to restore stability, to rebuild a broken nation, to make Russia respected again. In the 2000 election, Putin won easily. Once in power, he moved quickly. He silenced independent media, imprisoned or exiled powerful oligarchs, and brought regional governors under Kremlin control. Putin's rule was built on loyalty, fear, and the restoration of centralized authority. The West watched nervously, but most governments welcomed a more stable Russia. In 2004, Putin won re-election by a wide margin. But his second term was marked by growing tension with the West. By law, Putin couldn't serve a third term consecutively. So, in 2008, he made a move few saw coming. In 2012, he returned to the presidency. This time, protests erupted across Russia. In 2014, Putin shocked the world again. He framed the move as the return of historic Russian land. In the years that followed, Putin's Russia became increasingly authoritarian. Yet, Putin's grip on power remained firm. In 2022, he made his most controversial move yet, a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The war didn't go as planned. Ukraine resisted fiercely. He framed the war as a fight against NATO, against the West, against the so-called decay of liberal democracy. He told Russians they were under siege. As the war dragged on, Putin became more isolated yet more powerful at home. Yet, through it all, one thing remained clear. Vladimir Putin had redefined what it meant to be a leader in modern Russia. Was he a patriot or a tyrant, a restorer of Russian greatness, or a destroyer of its future? History will judge him, but the story of Vladimir Putin is far from over. What began in the frozen streets of post-war Leningrad led to the throne of the Kremlin, and from there, to the heart of the world's most dangerous power struggles. And his next move may already be in motion.